How good are you at interviewing people on camera? Let me tell you, if you're a producer, if you're a creative filmmaker, sooner or later, you're going to need to interview people. And the problem is most producers, most filmmakers don't do a very good job. And yet it's the heart, it's the key to a successful short video. I've talked before that short videos are the #1 marketing tool in America as of producing this. Right now, they're the #1 marketing tool in America, which means more organizations, businesses, nonprofit organizations, hospitals, universities, churches, ministry organizations are producing short videos because they're such a powerful way for people to tell their story. And people of all ages, studies indicate that people all the way across the spectrum from 20s to 50s, 60s are watching the same number. They're very, very popular out there. And there's a lot of statistics that almost half the audience that sees a short video wants to find out more. So what better tool could there be? Now, the problem with most videos that I encounter is the interviewer does not do a very good job. I mean, you've got a wonderful person. I saw a short video the other day on an outlaw biker and the transformation of his life into an outlaw biker and to a best-selling author. He'd got his life cleaned up. He'd been in jail a number of times. He'd led a big biker gang for years. And he had a radical encounter with God, turned his life around. He wrote a book about it. Now he's doing a one-man theatrical show about it. The problem was the interviewer did a terrible job. I thought, how many incredible experiences has this guy had in his life? How many life-changing moments? How many near-death moments? And yet this interviewer stuck with superficial stuff. Plus, they shot the whole interview in a wide shot. It never got up close where you could see an emotional connection or connect with the guy's eyes. There was so many things wrong with it. And so today I actually made a list of 10 keys to shooting a great video interview. And I'm just going to go through them today because these are important. I'd encourage you, if you are a creative leader and you have people that work with you that produce videos, gather them around. You want them to see this, share it with them, make notes, talk about it, teach your team how to shoot great video interviews because literally no matter how artsy the video is, no matter how great the cameraman is or how cool the lighting is or how awesome the music may be, if the interviews inside that video are not good, the video will not be good because they essentially tell the story. So if you're doing a video, here's some 10 keys that I think you ought to write down, 10 keys how to do it better. Number 1, be lean and mean. Be absolutely lean and mean. If you're doing an interview with somebody, particularly they're not a professional, they're not an industry professional, you don't want to walk into their house or walk into their place of work and drag in big lights and a big camera and a big tripod and makeup and that whole thing. Look, you don't freak them out. These are people that for the most of the people you interview will not be professionals. They will not be used to this. So they immediately freak out or clam up or get excessively nervous. So learn to be lean and mean. Get away with as little equipment as possible. Make it small equipment. How many battery-operated lights do we have on the market today? How many small cameras do we have? Don't make it a big production. I find some producers want to make everything a big production. I'll tell you, interviews need to be lean and mean because you want to make them so relaxed, so comfortable that they're going to share their heart. They're going to do exactly what you want them to do. So I've told the story before of an interview I've done where the cameraman just left the camera in his lap. He just left it in his lap just to make the person comfortable. We did the whole interview with him shooting the key parts just from his lap. So I think that's important. And by the way, I mentioned, when you come into their house, don't just bring them to a studio. Don't just do the black wall thing behind them. Don't bring them into a neutral situation. You want to show the environment they live in or they work in or whatever their story is, whatever story they're telling, you want to show to that environment. So do the interview there. Do the interview where you can get such a great story where they feel comfortable that helps reflect the story you're trying to tell. So anyway, number 1, be lean and mean. Don't go in there with a bunch of rigmarole, a bunch of equipment, a bunch of stuff. You don't want to scare them. You don't want to make them nervous. The key is to keep them as relaxed as possible. The second thing is, if possible, do a pre-interview. Do a pre-interview. I've discovered, I worked with a large organization a long time ago, and we were doing follow-up interviews with people that had encountered, it was actually a Christian ministry, and people who had encountered the ministry 20, 30 years earlier. And I was doing follow-up interviews. And I discovered that about 3 out of every 10 people I called could actually articulate their story well. So if you're dealing with a lot of people, the more pre-interview time you can have to find out, are they comfortable talking? Can they talk? Can they express their story well? Do they have such an accent that people wouldn't understand? All those things are critical. So don't just show up for the interview that you schedule and expect them to be perfect, to be great. Because very often people just don't do well on camera. So pre-interviews are good. Plus, it helps relax that person. It helps them get to know you, which is important. It helps you get to know them. And in a pre-interview, they may come out with stuff you didn't even know. And you can make notes about stories that you didn't research or you didn't know about. You'd be surprised at the secrets you can come out with a pre-interview. So anything that makes them more comfortable and gives me more information to use, I'm all for. The third thing I would say is keep the interviewee either out of the room until you're ready, or you keep them so preoccupied that they don't notice the setup going on. Because even if you're going lean and mean, you're still going to set up a light or two, maybe three. You're going to set up the camera, tripod. You've got to get out the audio, the mics, whether it's a boom or a lav or both. There is some equipment you have to get out. And you're going to have a crew. 1, 2, 3, 4 people helping you, depending on the size of the project. And the key is when they sit there to do their interview, and they're an amateur, they've never done this before, and they start seeing people plug in the wall and banging the furniture with the lights, and which of course you never do, right? And they start seeing the lights set up and the audio gear getting out and the camera being pulled out. Suddenly, oh, I didn't think about this. And they start to get nervous. They start to clam up. They start to just make things go south. And so really, this is really important. Either go have a cup of coffee with them in the kitchen if you can, or if you have to be in the room with the setup, keep them so engaged in a conversation. Don't spill the beans. You don't want them to talk about the story, and then when you're ready to do the interview, they think, well, I've already told it. Why do I need to tell it again? Just talk about their kids. Talk about their life. Talk about where they went to school. Talk about their family. Whatever. Just keep them engaged so they're not thinking about the stuff that's set up. It's very, very important. Number 4, this kind of goes with number 3. Don't talk about the subject until the camera's rolling. I've seen producers do the interview just in casual conversation with the person before the interview started, and they meant well. They were trying to keep them engaged and occupied, like I suggested, but they talk about the interview topic. So once the camera rolls, these people feel talked out. There's nothing left to say. So always think in terms of just talk about family members, talk about those other things. Don't get into the interview subject until the camera is actually rolling. Particularly, I might say, if it's a dramatic interview. If this is something about a near-death experience, about a horrible accident, about the loss of a loved one, let me tell you, they're going to tell that story once. They're going to tell it once. And if they told it before the camera rolled, you're dead. And if they do agree to say it again, it's going to be kind of wooden. It's not going to be real. It's not going to be authentic. So keep them occupied. Have a conversation, but have a cup of coffee or whatever, but don't get to the subject until the camera is rolling. Number 5, if the person asking the questions isn't on camera, in other words, if you, the producer, are asking the questions, make sure you're sitting as close to the camera as you possibly can. Literally, put your head right next to the lens. Or put the lens, better yet, put the lens slightly behind you, but still in the line of fire. The reason being, you want to see them head on. You want to see them head on. I want to interview somebody. I want to see both their eyes. So many people have the interviewer sit off to the side so that all they see is a profile. All the viewer sees is a profile. You can't tell a great story from a profile. You can't tell a great story if you're just seeing someone's eyes. There's no way. Or just one eye. The point is, you want that camera looking straight on in a person. And I've talked about this in other podcasts. You don't want to sit too high, have the camera too high or too low. Too high diminishes the people. It makes you look down on them. Too low makes you look up. But look straight on as much as you possibly can, eye level. Put that camera straight on. And that means if you're the interviewer, put your stool or put your camera or put your chair or whatever you're sitting on right next to the camera. I would even say uncomfortably close. I think that's very, very important. And number 7, a real secret is start rolling without the interviewee noticing. I've done this hundreds of times where, this person might be a little nervous, and most people are going to be a little bit nervous, but I've gotten to a place where When the crew is ready, I just get a tap on the shoulder from my camera operator. That means he's rolling, and I can just kind of flow into the interview without them even knowing. I've done interviews where at the end the person said, okay, are you ready to go? And they'd already told their story, and I had it all captured. They didn't even know we were rolling. And let me tell you, those are great interviews because the people aren't distracted. They're not nervous. Those are great interviews. So definitely think in terms of having a system. Just set up with your crew and make sure the lighting people in the room or the sound people in the room know to walk away, to get out of that person's line of sight. That's the key thing. You don't want any distractions there. That's very, very important. And number 8, let me just say this. This is really, really big. If there's a problem during the interview, don't let any crew member stop the shooting. Don't let any crew member stop the shooting. For instance, I've seen interviews where suddenly the light didn't look right, and a lighting guy will suddenly, in the middle of a tear-jerking, heartfelt moment, the lighting guy will say, okay, whoa, we need to stop. I need to reset the lights, please. I sort of punch the guy in the face. Punch him in the face. I don't even care if it is a problem that I can't even use. I don't want any crew member to stop the interview but me. I'm it. I'm the interview. Even the camera operator. If he sees something, I'll have him tap me on the shoulder again. And then I know there's a problem, and I'll let them finish their thought, and then we can stop the interview, we can reset, and then I'll know to go back and re-ask that question again. But anytime anybody in the crew takes it on themselves to stop the interview, inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. Because only you as the producer or the interviewer know where you are in the rhythm of the interview and the pacing of their story. And let me tell you something. I would rather let them finish a thought, let them finish a story, even though it's not usable because the video stopped or a battery died. Let them finish because you don't want to interrupt them hard. You talk about a hard reset in the middle of sharing their story. It completely throws them off. And if there is a problem, number 9, if there is a problem, don't let that interviewee think you're redoing anything. Let me tell you something. The worst thing in the world is to be told, I'm sorry, the battery died. You've got to go back and tell that whole story. Oh, man. I'm going to tell you, it's the worst feeling in the world, which means they're not going to tell the story well. They're going to shortcut it. They're not going to be emotional like they were. What I will do, and I understand there are situations where something unexpected happens. I've had a situation where most of the video was no good, and we knew it at that moment. So what I'll do, I never ever say, okay, we're going to have to redo this. Trust me, that plunges them into dark despair. Just don't do it. What I'm more likely to do is say, I have some additional questions I wanted to ask you. Do you mind? You were so good that I really want to ask a couple different questions. And once you start that, I just weave the original questions back in a different way. And lo and behold, they've retold their story without even realizing they've done it. A skillful interviewer can do that. So just remember, when you have to redo things, hopefully that's very rare, but when you have to redo things, never ever tell them that's what you're doing. It's not that you're lying, you're just not telling them the whole story. You're just not telling them something that's going to completely crush them and make them wish they could be anywhere else. So just say, wow, that was so fascinating. Can I ask you some more? Can I, let's change this battery or let's fix this light. And I want to ask you some more because this is great. And then you slowly go back and work those stories that you missed, that you didn't know didn't work. You'll re-ask those questions back into your interview. And you know what? The people feel great about it. They had no idea. And the last thing I would say is shoot in an interesting place. Shoot in an interesting place. I see so many interviews with people that are done on a typical sofa against a blank wall, or that are done in a studio, which is even worse. You know what? If this is a story about an incident that happened on the job, take that guy to his job. Get out there. I want to see his environment. I want to see the factory. I want to see the office, wherever it was. If it happened at home, I want to see him at their home. If it happened in a public place, go there and do the interview. As long as it's safe and quiet. But the key thing is you want the shot to be a visual expression of their story. If he's telling you about a revelation, a transformation that he has, an idea that he got working one day on the factory line, there's nothing that expresses that better than shooting him on the factory line, telling that story. If it's an architect, I want him in his office with the big, drafting tables out and plans out. I want to see the environment he's in. And then, of course, it's so easy then to get B-roll footage of him doing his work and doing stuff that help you edit and cover and illustrate that story. But just do it in an interesting place. Think about what I can do. Don't copy other people against a black background or the white chair thing. Don't try to do that. Just find an interesting place and do the interview. Is it more trouble? Of course. Is it more expensive? Probably. But the truth is, that short video will be so much better. And now, let me just give you a little bonus thing, a bonus tip. Be ready for anything. Be ready for anything. Whenever you do interviews with people, when you take a film crew or video crew out on the road and you start interviewing people, you will encounter all kinds of things. You'll get to their job site and find out they didn't really get permission to shoot there. I mean, that shouldn't happen because you should have followed up on that earlier. But you'll find people that suddenly will get nervous. You'll find people that suddenly have health complications that you have to shoot it in a different way than you planned. I tell you, something will always happen, something you never expected. You'll get there and there'll be airplanes flying over, there'll be an arrest going down next door, whatever. Always be ready for anything. Because the truth is, you want the authenticity of this being in the real world. So have a certain margin for what you might call normally imperfections. A little noise in the background isn't a problem. If I'm shooting an interview in the toughest part of town because this person was a former gang leader, or you're doing some kind of an outreach to gang members and there's sirens going on in the background, that's not necessarily a terrible thing. If you're interviewing someone about an incident that happened in the airport and you shoot at the gate and there's all kind of commotion going around, that's part of the real world of where it happened, and it helps you tell the story. So never try to get such a level of perfection in the sound and in the lighting and in the camera work that you're not telling the story. The whole idea of the shaky cam movement, that began pretty much with MTV back in the 80s, that whole shaky cam thing happened because they were trying to really throw people off kilter, put them in a real situation, make them think everything wasn't perfectly set up and pristinely planned. The whole shaky cam idea was designed to be real. What if we shot this handheld? Not in a jerky kind of overly planned way, but just shot it. In fact, most of the work we do today just has slight movement in it. That slight drift of a camera makes people understand. They don't even notice it for the most part, but it conveys a certain reality. So sometimes in the way we shoot videos and certainly shoot interviews, we can try to be so perfect that it makes it feel unnatural. It's not really as real as we'd like it to be. So in your interviews, think in terms of making it natural, which means you just need to be ready for anything. Be ready for anything. The perfect producer, in my book, is the producer who never lets the situation get in the way of telling a great story. Who never lets a perfectionist crew member get in the way of telling a great story. Who never lets the production get in the way of telling a great story. You're a producer, you're a filmmaker, you're an interviewer, and you want to make sure you're capturing that story at its absolute best, and that person is sharing it from their heart. Trust me, it will make such a powerful difference, you won't believe it. So I'd encourage you, if you're working with a team, get this podcast, share it with them, let them know that this stuff matters the next time you go on the road to do a shoot. I think it's so incredibly, incredibly important. So thanks for joining us. Please join me at my blog at philcook.com. We're talking about these things and other stuff related to production, creativity, leading creative people, engaging the culture with media. That's what my life is all about. And I would love to share more things with you there. And just remember that, your goal in all this is ultimately to tell the kind of story that will impact people in a powerful way. A great interview is a key part of doing it.